Captain Daewon Kim stood on the bridge of his ship, staring at the dead world through the main screen. Earth floated before him like a broken stone, gray and lifeless. No blue oceans remained. No green forests covered its surface. The planet that had once been home to billions of humans was now nothing more than a burned rock. "Captain," said Dr. Minji Park from her station, "I'm reading the quantum traces. They match our records perfectly." Her voice was quiet but steady. "This is what remains of Earth." Daewon nodded slowly. He had expected this sight, but seeing it still felt like a punch to the gut. 500,000 years had passed since the Dominion Alliance destroyed his people's homeworld. 500,000 years since humanity had been scattered to the winds, presumed extinct by the galaxy. But they were wrong. "Commander Lee, what's our tactical situation?" Daewon asked. Commander Hyunwoo Lee looked up from his console. "All clear, Captain. No Dominion patrols in this sector. They don't even bother watching this system anymore. To them, it's just empty space. That was their first mistake. The Dominion had grown lazy over the centuries. They ruled 12 species now, controlling most of the galaxy. They had enslaved hundreds of worlds and wiped out dozens of civilizations, but they had forgotten about the survivors who escaped Earth's destruction." Dr. Park moved away from her station and joined Daewon at the main screen. "The molecular analysis is complete," she said. "They didn't just bomb Earth, they poisoned it. Every atom of water, every grain of soil. They wanted to make sure nothing could ever live here again. Thorough," Hyunwoo said with bitter respect. "The Vorthak always were efficient killers. The Vorthak Empire had led the attack on Earth. They were the strongest military force in the Dominion, proud warriors who believed might made right. They had seen humanity as a threat that needed to be removed completely, not conquered, not enslaved, but erased." "Sir," called Ensign Taemin from the communication station, "we're receiving a coded transmission from the fleet." "Put it through," Daewon ordered. The hologram of Admiral Ji-won Choi appeared above the bridge. She was an older woman with sharp eyes and silver hair. "Captain Kim, what's your status?" "Mission complete, Admiral. Earth is confirmed dead. The Dominion's records were accurate." Daewon's voice stayed level, professional. "We've also completed our survey of the outer system. No defensive installations, no monitoring stations. They're not watching." Admiral Choi smiled, but it wasn't a happy expression. "Perfect. And the secondary objectives? Also complete. We've identified 12 major Dominion military bases within 50 light years. Their fleet positions, defense patterns, communication protocols. Commander Lee has full tactical data ready for transmission. Excellent work. Return to the staging area immediately. Phase 2 begins in 72 hours. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Through the main screen, Earth continued its slow rotation, a monument to genocide. Dr. Park pulled up a holographic display showing the planet's surface. Ancient crater patterns were still visible, marking where the Dominion's planet-killer weapons had struck. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a section of what had once been the Pacific Ocean. "They didn't just destroy the cities. They cracked the planetary crust in 17 places." "Overkill," Hyunwoo observed. "Even for the Vorthak." "No," Daewon said quietly. "They were afraid." Both officers looked at him. "Sir?" Park asked. Daewon walked closer to the display, studying the destruction patterns. "Think about it. Humanity had only been in space for 300 years when they found us. We had maybe 50 colonies, basic technology, no real military to speak of, but they used planet killers. They poisoned the entire world. They hunted down every human settlement they could find." He turned to face his crew. They were terrified of what we might become. The bridge fell silent again. It was a sobering thought. The Dominion hadn't destroyed Earth because humanity was strong. They had destroyed it because humanity had potential. "Sir," Ensign Taemin called out, "I'm detecting movement on the edge of the system. 3 ships, Zentari design." Hyunwoo immediately moved to his tactical station. "They're not military. Looks like a merchant convoy, probably carrying mining equipment to the asteroid belt." "Do they see us?" Daewon asked. "Negative. We're running full stealth mode. To their sensors, we're just background radiation." Daewon studied the tactical display. The Zentari were one of the Dominion's member species, focused on trade and industry. They were probably here to strip mine the asteroids that had once been Mars and Venus. The Dominion had blown up Earth's neighboring planets too, just to be thorough. "Should we take them out?" Hyunwoo asked. His finger hovered over the weapons control. "No," Daewon decided. "Let them go." We're not ready to reveal ourselves yet. The Zentari ships passed through the system without incident, heading for the outer asteroid fields. They had no idea that human eyes were watching them, that human ships had returned to the graveyard of their homeworld. Dr. Park was still studying the planet below. Daewon, I want to take a sample back with us. From Earth's surface, Minji, there's nothing alive down there. The radiation alone would kill anything organic in minutes. I know, but it's still Earth, it's still home. Her voice carried a weight that made both men understand. She wasn't asking as a scientist. She was asking as a human. Fine, but we do it quick. In and out, minimal exposure. They took a shuttle down to the surface, landing in what had once been Korea. The ground was cracked and dead, covered in a fine ash that had once been forests and cities. Dr. Park collected her samples while Daewon and Hyunwoo stood guard, though there was nothing left to guard against. Standing on Earth's dead surface, Daewon felt something change inside him. For 500,000 years, humanity had survived in hidden colonies, always moving, always hiding. They had grown strong in secret, developing technologies the Dominion couldn't imagine. But they had never forgotten this moment, this place, this crime. Back on the ship, Daewon sealed the samples in a special container. Then he walked to the communication station and began composing a message to the hidden fleet, waiting in dark space beyond the galaxy's edge. Admiral Choi, this is Captain Kim. The tomb is empty. The mourners have become the hunters. Earth remembers, and so do we. Beginning transmission of tactical data now. Recommend immediate implementation of Phase 2. He paused, looking one last time at the dead world below. The galaxy thinks we're extinct. Let's keep it that way a little longer. When we're ready, when they least expect it, we'll remind them what happens when you try to murder humanity. The message was sent on a quantum encrypted channel that no Dominion technology could detect. Within hours, it would reach the massive fleet that had been preparing for this moment for 5 centuries. The Dominion had forgotten about humanity. Soon they would remember, and they would regret it. 6 months had passed since Captain Daewon Kim's reconnaissance mission to Earth. Now, strange things were happening across Dominion space. On Vorthak Prime, the military capital of the Dominion Alliance, General Krutak stared at his computer screen in confusion. For the 3rd time this week, his tactical systems had shut down for no reason. Battle plans disappeared. Communication networks failed. Even the coffee machines in the officers' mess hall had stopped working. This is impossible, he growled at his aide. These systems have worked perfectly for 2,000 years. Similar problems plagued every Dominion world. On Zentari trading stations, automated cargo systems began routing shipments to random destinations. Nethan psychics found their mental enhancement computers producing nothing but static. The proud hegemony council couldn't even turn on the lights in their meeting chambers. None of them suspected the truth. Deep in the quantum networks that connected their civilization, Specialist Taehyung Shin and his team of human cyber warriors were hard at work. Taehyung sat in a darkened room aboard the stealth ship Phantom Strike, his hands dancing over holographic interfaces that looked nothing like Dominion technology. Lines of code flowed across multiple screens, each one representing another system under human control. Target acquired, he announced to his team. I'm inside the Vorthak military network. Their encryption is pathetic. His teammate, Specialist Yuna, looked up from her own station. The Zentari banking system just went down galaxy-wide. They're losing billions of credits per hour. Good, said their commander, Major Seojin Park. Let them panic. The more they fight each other, the less attention they pay to us. This was humanity's true weapon, developed over 500,000 years of exile. While the Dominion had grown comfortable with their ancient technologies, humans had never stopped innovating. They had learned to manipulate quantum networks, to exist in digital spaces the Dominion couldn't even detect. Taehyung pulled up another interface, this one showing the locations of every Dominion fleet in the galaxy. Major, I've got something interesting here. The Vorthak are blaming the Zentari for the system failures. They're threatening military action. Perfect. Paranoia is our best ally right now. Meanwhile, on the other side of Dominion space, Dr. Minji Park was conducting a very different kind of mission. Her ship, disguised as a Dominion medical vessel, approached the prison world of Kepler-7. Scanning the surface now, she reported to her team. Population approximately 50 million. All slaves working in the mineral extraction facilities. Her assistant, Lieutenant Hana Kim, shook her head sadly. The medical readings are terrible. Malnutrition, disease, genetic damage from radiation exposure. How long have these people been enslaved? According to our intelligence, about 8,000 years. Their original civilization was destroyed by the Dominion for refusing to surrender. Dr. Park had seen dozens of worlds like this over the past 6 months. Entire species reduced to slave labor, their cultures erased, their children raised knowing nothing but servitude. The Dominion called it integration, but it was really just slow genocide. "Doctor," called the ship's pilot, "we're receiving a transmission from the surface. It's unusual. Put it through." A weak signal appeared on their screen, obviously transmitted in secret. It showed a humanoid figure with pale skin and dark hair, speaking in a language that made Dr. Park's heart skip. "Is that?" Lieutenant Kim asked. "Korean," Dr. Park whispered. "That's old Korean." From before Earth's destruction, the figure on the screen continued speaking, apparently unaware they were being monitored. Dr. Park activated the translation protocols, and the words appeared as text. "Today marks another year since the ships came. Grandmother says we came from a world of blue seas and green trees. But I think she's making up stories. How could such a place exist?" Dr. Park felt tears in her eyes. "There are humans down there, descendants of the colonies that were captured during the Purge. This changed everything. Intelligence reports had suggested some humans might have survived as slaves, but finding proof was different. These people had kept their language alive for 500,000 years, passing down memories of Earth through generations of slavery. "We have to help them," Lieutenant Kim said. "We will, but not yet. First we document everything. Every crime, every atrocity. The galaxy needs to see what the Dominion really is." Dr. Park began recording everything they observed. The slave camps, the punishment centers, the factories where children worked 18-hour shifts. She had similar footage from dozens of worlds now, building a case that would condemn the Dominion in the eyes of any civilized species. Back in Dominion space, the paranoia was reaching critical levels. The Vorthak had accused 3 different species of sabotage. The Zentari were convinced their trading partners were trying to destroy their economy. Even the psychic Nethan were suspecting each other of mental attacks. Supreme Chancellor Vextar of the Dominion Council called an emergency meeting. Representatives from all 12 member species gathered on the neutral station of Haven 1, their most secure facility. "This chaos must end," Vextar declared, his forearms gesturing dramatically. "Our systems are failing across the galaxy. Trade has collapsed. Military efficiency is at an all-time low. Someone is responsible." General Krutak of the Vorthak slammed his fist on the table. "The Zentari banking networks were the first to fail. They're trying to manipulate galactic commerce." "Ridiculous," snapped Trade Minister Zephon of the Zentari. "Your military computers failed first. You're trying to start a war to cover your incompetence." The Nethan representative, a pale figure with oversized eyes, spoke in a whisper that somehow filled the room. "I sense something, a presence that should not be here. Something old and angry." "Superstitious nonsense," Krutak growled. But the Nethan was right. Specialist Taehyung and his team had infiltrated Haven 1 systems weeks ago. They were listening to every word, watching every gesture. The Dominion Council had no idea their most secret meeting was being broadcast live to human command ships across the galaxy. Admiral Ji-Won Choi watched the transmission from her flagship, the Retribution. Around her, the bridge crew listened as their enemies tore each other apart with accusations and threats. "How long before they figure it out?" asked her tactical officer. "They won't," Admiral Choi replied confidently. "They can't imagine an enemy they didn't know existed. To them, we're still extinct." On the screen, the Dominion representatives continued arguing. Some called for investigation. Others demanded immediate military action against suspected saboteurs. None of them considered the possibility that their victims might have returned. Dr. Park's voice came through the communication system. "Admiral, I'm transmitting the documentation from Kepler-7 and 15 other worlds. The evidence is overwhelming." "Understood, Doctor. How many human survivors have you found?" "Difficult to estimate, but I believe there are at least 50 million descendants scattered across Dominion space. They've maintained fragments of our culture despite centuries of oppression." Admiral Choi felt a cold fury building in her chest. 50 million humans enslaved and forgotten, their existence denied by the very species that had destroyed their homeworld. The Dominion hadn't been content with genocide. They had turned survivors into tools. Specialist Taehyung, she called. Yes, Admiral. I want you to send a message to every human descendant in Dominion space. Use their old communication frequencies, the ones they think we've forgotten. What should the message say? Admiral Choi smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Tell them their cousins have come home. Tell them the long exile is over. And tell them to be ready. The message went out through quantum channels the Dominion couldn't monitor. On 50 worlds across their territory, enslaved humans received impossible words in their ancient language. We have returned. We remember. We come for justice. In the Dominion Council chambers, the arguments were getting more heated. Accusations flew between species. Old rivalries surfaced. The alliance that had ruled the galaxy for millennia was tearing itself apart from within. They still didn't understand they were fighting ghosts. But soon, very soon, those ghosts would become all too real. The first Dominion patrol to encounter humanity's return died before they could send a warning. Commander Hyunwoo. Lee watched from the bridge of his destroyer as 3 Vorthak warships exploded in silent flashes of light. The battle had lasted exactly 47 seconds. The enemy had never seen his ship, never detected his weapons, never understood what killed them. Clean sweep, reported his tactical officer. No survivors, no transmission sent. Good. Take us to the next patrol route. This was happening across Dominion space. Small patrol groups simply vanished. Supply convoys disappeared between systems. Communication relays went dark without explanation. The Dominion military machine was being carved apart piece by piece, so carefully that each loss looked like an accident. But Admiral Jiwon Choi knew they couldn't stay hidden much longer. In the command center of her flagship, she studied holographic displays showing the positions of every major Dominion fleet. It was time to reveal humanity's true strength. General Park, she called to her ground forces commander, are your liberation teams ready? General Sung-Ho Park nodded grimly. 12 world simultaneous operations. We'll free every human descendant and document every Dominion war crime. The galaxy will see what they really are. Excellent. Lieutenant Kim, what's the status of our experimental squadrons? Lieutenant Yuna Kim stood at attention. All fighters tested and ready, Admiral. The dimensional drive systems are operating at peak efficiency. Admiral Choi smiled with satisfaction. Her forces weren't just technologically superior to the Dominion. They were so far advanced that the enemy couldn't even understand how human weapons worked. The dimensional fighters were a perfect example. Using technology developed during the long exile, they could phase between realities, attacking from angles that didn't exist in normal space. To Dominion sensors, they were invisible until the moment they fired. Ambassador Yoon, Admiral Choi addressed her diplomatic officer, I want you to prepare broadcast equipment. When we reveal ourselves, the entire galaxy needs to hear our message. Ambassador Jiho Yoon bowed slightly. What message would you like to send, Admiral? The truth, all of it. What the Dominion did to Earth. What they've done to hundreds of other worlds. What they've done to our people. Her voice grew cold. Let every species in the galaxy understand exactly who they've been serving. The liberation of Kepler-7 began at dawn on the planet's main continent. General Park's soldiers appeared like ghosts in the slave camps, moving through solid walls using phase technology. The Dominion guards never saw them coming. Dr. Minji Park followed the first wave of troops, her medical team ready to help the survivors. She found them in worse condition than her scans had suggested. Generations of malnutrition and abuse had left their mark, but their eyes still held the spark of humanity. You're safe now, she told a group of frightened children in ancient Korean. We're your family. We've come to take you home. An elderly woman pushed through the crowd, her face marked by a lifetime of hard labor. Are you real? She whispered. Or are we dreaming again? We're real, Dr. Park assured her. We're humans like you. From the stars like in the old stories, the woman began to cry. Grandmother said you would come back. She said the star people would remember us. Similar scenes were playing out on 12 worlds simultaneously. Human liberation forces appeared without warning, freed their enslaved cousins, and then vanished again before Dominion reinforcements could arrive. Each operation was recorded in detail, creating a documentary record of the Dominion's crimes. But the Dominion military was finally beginning to understand they faced a real threat. On Vorthak Prime, General Krutak assembled the largest battle fleet in galactic history. 5,000 warships representing all 12 Dominion species gathered at the strategic system of Kepler's Gate. Whatever is attacking us, it ends now, Krutak declared to his assembled commanders. No more mysterious disappearances. No more system failures. We make our stand here. The Vorthak general was confident in his fleet's power. These were the same ships that had destroyed Earth, that had conquered hundreds of worlds. Their weapons could crack planets. Their shields could stop any known energy beam. They had no idea they were about to face weapons that operated on principles they couldn't understand. Captain Day 1. Kim's ship was the first to arrive at Kepler's gate. To Dominion sensors, it still looked like a small reconnaissance vessel. They had no way of knowing it was actually a massive dreadnought using holographic disguises. Admiral Choi, Daewon reported over the quantum communication link. The enemy fleet is larger than expected, 5,000 ships including their newest planet killers. Understood, Captain. Proceed with the original plan. It's time to show them what humanity has learned. The Battle of Kepler's Gate began when General Krutak demanded the mysterious ship identify itself. Captain Daewon's response was broadcast across every communication frequency in the galaxy. This is Captain Daewon Kim of the Human Liberation Fleet. We are the children of Earth, returned from exile. We are here to collect payment for a debt 500,000 years old. The reaction was immediate. On every Dominion world, alien citizens stopped what they were doing to stare at their communication screens. The name human was legendary, mythical. No one had believed they still existed. General Krutak's response was equally predictable. Impossible. Humans are extinct. You're terrorists using false identities. Allow me to correct your misconception, Captain Daewon replied calmly. His ship dropped its holographic disguise. The small scout vessel suddenly revealed itself as a battleship 3 times larger than anything in the Dominion fleet. Its hull was covered in weapons the aliens couldn't identify, powered by energy sources that made their scanners scream warnings. But that was only the beginning. All around the Dominion fleet, space began to shimmer. One by one, more human ships appeared, each one materializing from what seemed like empty vacuum. They had been there all along, hidden in dimensions the Dominion couldn't perceive. Lieutenant Yuna Kim led the first attack wave. Her dimensional fighters phased into normal space directly inside the Dominion formation, firing weapons that ignored shields and armor completely. Enemy ships didn't just explode. They came apart at the molecular level. Their atoms scattered like dust. Impossible, General Krutak whispered as his tactical display showed ship after ship simply ceasing to exist. Their weapons. They're firing backwards through time. He was right. Humanity's exile had given them time to master technologies that made physics itself into a weapon. They could shoot around corners that didn't exist, attack from directions that had no name. The Dominion fleet fought back with everything they had. Planet killer beams lanced out toward human ships only to be absorbed and converted into pure energy. Quantum torpedoes phased harmlessly through hulls that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Admiral Choi watched the battle from her command ship, feeling no satisfaction in the slaughter. This wasn't revenge, it was education. The galaxy needed to see that the Dominion's power was an illusion. Ambassador Yoon, she ordered, begin the broadcast. Across every world in known space, communication networks activated simultaneously. Humans had taken control of them all months ago, but only now did they reveal their presence. Ambassador Yoon appeared on screens throughout Dominion territory. Behind him, footage played showing the liberation operations. The slave camps, the evidence of genocide. Citizens of the galaxy, he began. For 500,000 years you have been told that humans were a dangerous species that needed to be destroyed. We were called warlike, aggressive, a threat to galactic peace. The footage shifted to show Earth's destruction, recorded by Dominion cameras 500,000 years ago. This was the price of that lie. An entire world, billions of innocent lives, erased because we refused to bow to Dominion rule. New images appeared, the slave camps, the human descendants working in mines and factories, the children who had never seen sunlight. But we survived, and we learned, and now we have returned to collect what is owed. In the space around Kepler's gate, the Dominion fleet was being systematically dismantled. General Krutak's flagship was one of the last ships still fighting, its weapons firing desperately at enemies that seemed to exist everywhere and nowhere at once. This is impossible, he kept repeating. No species could develop such technology. It violates the fundamental laws of physics. Captain Daywin's voice came through the communication system one final time. General, you made one critical error 500,000 years ago. You assumed that destroying our world meant destroying our potential. But potential cannot be killed. It can only be delayed. The last Dominion ship exploded in a flash of brilliant light. Of 5,000 vessels, not one survived. But Admiral Choi wasn't finished. As the debris field cooled, she activated the most dramatic demonstration of human technology yet developed. Reality itself began to shift around the battlefield. Time ran backwards, showing the destroyed ships reforming, the battle playing in reverse. When the temporal effect ended, the Dominion fleet was back exactly as it had been before the fight began. Every ship intact, every crew member alive and unharmed. The message was clear. Humanity could destroy their enemies completely, then bring them back to life just to prove a point. Judge Advocate Seojin Lim stood before the largest courtroom ever constructed. Built in orbit around the dead world of Earth, the tribunal station could hold representatives from every species in the galaxy. Today, it was filled to capacity. The defendants sat in specially designed cells that could contain beings from 12 different species. General Krutak of the Vorthak Empire glared defiantly at his human captors. Trade Minister Zephon of the Zentari kept his eyes fixed on his hands, unable to look at the evidence displays. The psychic Nethan representative, Whisper of Distant Stars, had gone completely silent since his capture. This tribunal, Judge Lim announced, will determine the fate of those responsible for the systematic extermination of over 200 sentient species, including the near-complete genocide of humanity. In the gallery, survivors from dozens of worlds watched the proceedings. Dr. Minji Park sat with a group of human descendants she had helped liberate. Their faces showed a mixture of hope and ancient pain. Captain Nara Jang had spent months investigating Dominion leadership. Her intelligence teams had uncovered records going back millions of years, documenting every act of genocide, every enslaved world, every culture erased from history. Your Honor, Captain Jang testified, the evidence shows this was not random conquest. The Dominion specifically targeted species that showed independence, creativity, or rapid technological development. They weren't building an empire, they were preventing competition. The courtroom screens displayed footage from the investigations. Slave camps on hundreds of worlds, mass graves filled with beings who had refused to submit, industrial facilities where children worked until they died of exhaustion. Elder Borum Kwan, nearly 400 years old and the last living human who remembered Earth's final days, spoke with a voice that carried the weight of centuries. I was 12 years old when the evacuation ships left Earth, she testified. I watched our world burn from the observation deck of the colony ship Hope's Dream. The captain told us we would return someday. I never believed him, but here we are. Her testimony brought tears to eyes throughout the courtroom. She described Earth's final hours, how humans had faced extinction not with despair but with defiant hope, how the last transmission from the dying planet had been a promise of return, not a plea for mercy. But the trials revealed something even more disturbing. Captain Jang's investigation had uncovered the Dominion's long-term plan, a galaxy-wide extermination program that had been running for over 1,000,000 years. They called it the Purification Protocol, she explained to the court. Any species that showed potential for rapid advancement was marked for destruction. They didn't just want to rule the galaxy, they wanted to own it completely with no possibility of future challenges. Dr. Park presented her biological analysis. The Dominion has been slowly poisoning dozens of worlds over the past 100,000 years. They release toxins that take generations to kill, making it look like natural environmental collapse. Then they move in to rescue the survivors who become grateful slaves. The evidence was overwhelming. The Dominion hadn't just committed genocide against humanity. They had been systematically murdering entire civilizations for over 1,000,000 years. General Krutak finally broke his silence. We did what was necessary, he snarled from his containment cell. The galaxy needed order. Weak species dragged down the strong. We brought stability. You brought death, Judge Lim replied coldly. 200 species extinct. Billions of individuals murdered. Entire cultures erased from history. The Vorthak general showed no remorse. And we'd do it again. That's what strength means. The will to do what others cannot. His words triggered protests throughout the courtroom. Survivors shouted in languages from across the galaxy, all expressing the same sentiment. Justice demanded punishment, but the human leadership was divided on what that punishment should be. Admiral Jiwon Choi advocated for total war. They tried to exterminate us, she argued in closed sessions with the Human Command Council. They succeeded in murdering 200 other species. They've poisoned worlds and enslaved children. Justice demands we return the favor. Ambassador Ji Ho-yoon disagreed. If we become genocidal killers, how are we different from them? We have the power to destroy every Dominion world, but having the power doesn't mean we should use it. The debate raged for weeks while the trials continued. Evidence mounted showing the true scope of Dominion crimes. They hadn't just destroyed civilizations. They had prevented the development of countless others. The galaxy might have been filled with hundreds of advanced species, sharing knowledge and exploring together. Instead, it was a graveyard watched over by 12 species who feared progress. Captain Daewon Kim found himself caught between the two positions. Part of him wanted to see every Dominion world burn as Earth had burned, but another part remembered the human descendants they had rescued, children who had never known anything but slavery but still dreamed of freedom. What would they want us to do? He asked Dr. Park during one of their private conversations. The 200 extinct species, what would they want? Dr. Park was quiet for a long moment. I think they'd want to make sure it never happens again. The answer came from an unexpected source. Elder Quan requested to address the Command Council privately. Despite her age, her voice was still strong. I've lived through 500,000 years of exile, she told them. I've seen humanity grow from refugees into the most powerful force in the galaxy. I've watched you develop technologies that can reshape reality itself. But the most important thing I've learned is this. Revenge is not justice. She gestured toward the viewing screen showing Earth's dead surface. They killed our world, but they failed to kill our humanity. If we respond to genocide with genocide, they win. They turn us into the monsters they claimed we always were. Admiral Choi frowned. So we let them live? After everything they've done? No, Elder Quan replied. We make them live with what they've done. We make them face the consequences. We make them rebuild what they destroyed. And we make sure they never get the chance to destroy again. The solution came to them gradually. The Dominion species wouldn't be exterminated, but they would face something that might be worse. Rehabilitation. The siege of Vorthak Prime became the symbol of humanity's chosen path. Instead of destroying the Dominion's military capital, General Sung Ho Park's forces surrounded it and waited. People of Vorthak Prime, his broadcast message announced, you have a choice. Surrender and face justice or starve in isolation. We will not kill you, but we will not allow you to continue harming others. The siege lasted 6 months. During that time, human broadcasts showed Vorthak civilians the evidence of their government's crimes. Many had never known the full extent of what their military had done in their name. The city finally surrendered when civilian protests forced the military government from power. The Vorthak people themselves demanded justice for their leaders' crimes. Similar scenes played out across Dominion space. Some species chose to fight to extinction rather than face the shame of their actions. Others, like the Zentari, immediately began offering reparations and cooperation. But the most important change was happening on the liberated worlds. Human descendants were reunited with their long-lost cousins. Enslaved species were freed to rebuild their civilizations. Children who had never seen their homeworlds were finally able to go home. Dr. Park established refugee centers on dozens of worlds, helping survivors heal from generations of trauma. The work was slow and difficult, but she could see hope returning to faces that had known only despair. The trials will end soon, Judge Lim announced as the proceedings entered their final phase. But justice is not something that can be delivered in a courtroom. Justice is what we build together every day to make sure this never happens again. The sentences, when they came, were unprecedented in galactic history. The Dominion leadership would spend the rest of their lives helping to rebuild the worlds they had destroyed. They would work alongside the descendants of their victims, learning firsthand the cost of their choices. Some called it mercy. Others called it the cruelest punishment possible. But it was uniquely human, turning enemies into unwilling allies in the cause of rebuilding what they had broken. The trials ended with Elder Quan's final testimony. 500,000 years ago, they tried to kill our hope, she said. Today we choose to give them some of ours. That is what makes us human. That is what makes us strong. As the courtroom emptied, Earth still hung in the viewing screens, dead and gray. But for the first time in 500,000 years, it no longer looked like an ending. It looked like a beginning. President Heun Song stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, watching the most impossible sight in galactic history. Below her, Earth was blue again. 2 years had passed since the trials ended. The planet that had been dead for 500,000 years now had oceans that sparkled in the sunlight. Clouds drifted across continents where green forests were beginning to grow. Cities rose from the restored landscape, their lights visible even from orbit. The atmospheric processors are working perfectly, reported Admiral Minho Kang, her chief of reconstruction operations. Oxygen levels are at 92% of pre-destruction norms. The artificial gravity generators have stabilized the planetary core. We should be able to resettle the first colonists within 6 months. It was a miracle of technology and will. Using knowledge gained during their long exile, humanity had literally brought a world back from the dead. They had rebuilt Earth atom by atom, ocean by ocean, forest by forest, but Earth was just the beginning. Director Soyano's rehabilitation centers were operating on over 300 worlds now. Former Dominion soldiers worked alongside their former victims, learning to build instead of destroy. Fourth-act warriors, once proud conquerors, now taught engineering to the children of species they had enslaved. The progress reports are encouraging, Director O told President Song during their weekly briefing. Psychological evaluations showed genuine change in over 60% of program participants. They're beginning to understand the cost of what they did. It wasn't easy work. Some Dominion species refused rehabilitation and chose exile in distant sectors of the galaxy. Others pretended to change while secretly planning rebellion. But many were genuinely trying to make amends for centuries of brutality. The Zentari had been the most successful rehabilitation case. Their natural talent for trade and organization made them valuable partners in rebuilding destroyed worlds. Trade Minister Zephon, serving his sentence as a construction coordinator, had actually requested an extension of his service term. "I need to see this through," he had told Director O. "My people destroyed so much. We need to build more than we broke." Captain Daewon Kim, now Admiral Kim, commanded the largest exploration fleet in galactic history. His mission wasn't conquest, but discovery, finding the ruins of extinct civilizations and helping their descendants reclaim their heritage. "We've located the homeworld of the Kepler 7 survivors," he reported to President Song. The planet was strip-mined by the Dominion, but the core ecosystems can be restored. The descendants are eager to go home. Each discovery brought new challenges. Some extinct species had left behind technologies that could reshape the galaxy. Others had hidden their survivors so well that finding them required decades of careful searching. But humanity was patient now. They had learned the value of taking time to do things right. Dr. Minji Park had perhaps the most important job of all, serving as the galactic historian. Her teams documented every recovered civilization, every rescued culture, every story that the Dominion had tried to erase. "We've identified fragments of 237 extinct species so far," she reported. "Some have living descendants. Others exist only in archaeological remains, but all of them deserve to be remembered." Her work revealed the true scope of what the galaxy had lost: advanced mathematics from the crystalline shimmering ones, art forms that used light itself as a medium from the prism builders, music that could heal emotional trauma from the song weavers. All of it had been destroyed because it threatened Dominion control. But perhaps the most remarkable discovery came from the deepest archives of Dominion High Command. Captain Narajang, still conducting investigations 2 years later, found records that changed everyone's understanding of galactic history. "Humanity wasn't the first species to resist the Dominion," she announced to the assembled leadership. "We weren't even the 10th. There have been over 50 major rebellions in the past 1,000,000 years. We're just the first one that survived long enough to come back." The evidence was undeniable. Species after species had recognized the Dominion's threat and tried to stop them. Each rebellion had been crushed, each resistant species exterminated. The galaxy was a graveyard not of random conquest, but of systematic suppression of anyone who wouldn't submit. "We're not special because we're stronger," Captain Jang concluded. We're special because we got lucky. The colony ships launched just in time. The outer settlements were just far enough away. If the Dominion had been more thorough, we'd be another extinct species in their files. This revelation changed humanity's perspective on their victory. They hadn't won because they were superior. They had won because they represented the accumulated hopes of 1,000,000 years of resistance. Every extinct species had contributed something to humanity's eventual triumph, even if they never knew it. Elder Borum Kwan, now over 400 years old and still sharp, put it best during a speech to the Galactic Council. We didn't defeat the Dominion alone. We carried the dreams of every species they destroyed. We fought with the courage of every being who refused to surrender. We won because we remembered what they tried to make us forget, that freedom is worth dying for. The new galaxy that emerged from Reconstruction was unlike anything that had existed before. Instead of one dominant power ruling through fear, hundreds of species worked together as equals. Trade replaced tribute. Cooperation replaced conquest. Lieutenant Yuna Kim, now Captain Kim and commander of the Diplomatic Corps, found her new job harder than piloting dimensional fighters. Fighting the Dominion was simple, she admitted to her old commander. Everyone knew who the enemy was. Building a peaceful galaxy is much more complicated. She was right. Old rivalries surfaced between liberated species. Trade disputes arose over Reconstruction resources. Some worlds wanted revenge against former Dominion species, even those trying to make amends. But slowly, carefully, the new galactic civilization took shape. The United Species Council replaced the old Dominion hierarchy. The Charter of Galactic Rights protected smaller civilizations from exploitation. Most importantly, the Remembrance Protocols ensured that the history of the Dominion's crimes would never be forgotten or repeated. Ambassador Jiho Yoon, now Secretary General of the Council, worked tirelessly to mediate disputes and build consensus. His greatest challenge came when several liberated species demanded the right to enslave former Dominion populations in revenge. "We understand your anger," he told their representatives, "but if we allow slavery to continue even as punishment, we become what we fought against. Justice means breaking the cycle, not continuing it." The decision was close, but ultimately the Council voted to ban slavery in all forms across galactic civilization. Former slaves would not become slave masters. The cycle of oppression would end with humanity's generation. 5 years after the trials, President Song returned to Earth for the first official ceremony on the restored world. The rebuilt city of New Seoul hosted delegations from over 400 species. Children from dozens of worlds played together in parks where human cities had once stood. Admiral Ji-won Choi, now elderly but still sharp, joined Song on the platform overlooking the celebration. "Do you think we made the right choice?" she asked. Showing mercy to species that showed us none, Song watched a group of young Vorthak and human children, building something together with construction blocks. They were laughing at some shared joke, completely unaware of the ancient hatred between their species. "Look at them," Song replied. "That Vorthak child's grandfather probably helped destroy Earth. That human girl's great-great-grandmother died in the slave camps. But they're friends. They're building something together instead of tearing it apart." She paused, watching the children's game continue. "Maybe that's what justice really looks like. Not punishment, but transformation. Not revenge, but redemption." The ceremony concluded with the unveiling of the memorial wall, a structure containing the names of every being lost to Dominion aggression over the past 1,000,000 years. Humans and aliens, slaves and free citizens, warriors and civilians, all remembered together. At the bottom of the wall, a simple inscription in the common galactic language: "Never again." Never forgotten, never alone. But the most important words were written in ancient Korean, translated for those who wanted to understand. "Even the deepest wounds can heal, if we choose to let them." As the sun set over Earth's restored oceans, President Song knew that humanity had achieved something greater than revenge. They had proven that even a species capable of unimaginable destruction could choose to create instead. The galaxy would never be perfect. There would always be conflicts, misunderstandings, and difficulties. But it would be free, and it would remember the price of freedom, thanks to a species that had refused to let genocide have the final word. In the end, Humanity's greatest victory wasn't the destruction of their enemies. It was the choice to help their enemies become something better. That was the most human thing of all. The belief that anyone could change, that anyone could be redeemed, that anyone could choose to build instead of destroy. The children in the park continued playing as darkness fell, their laughter echoing across a world that had been dead, but now lived again. And in that sound was the future of the galaxy.